Well, hope everybody's got something fun planned for a long weekend. Obviously, Memorial Weekend. Um, so I just wanted to do this quick um, call, I guess, this quick chat. Um, Obviously, I threw it on the calendar. We had a slight chance that we were going to get a verdict today, but that's not the case. So, jurors going to come back on Tuesday to deliberate further, and we'll see. I mean, I would imagine we'll get a verdict on Tuesday. You never know, but it is just a false statement case. So I'd be surprised if it went further than Tuesday. So I was looking through my notes. Obviously, I was at the trial for 3 days. I took a ton of notes, especially on one of the days when I didn't live tweet. So there was just a couple points I wanted to clean up on Jared Novick, and then obviously I want to get into kind of the fireworks that happen as they're wrapping things up a little bit. So um, on Jared Novick, I always already went through the companies already, so I'm not going to do that again. Um, couple points I did want to hit. So Novick describes being extremely uncomfortable when Joffe sent over this list of Trump associates, basically tasking him to hunt for dirt on Trump and some of his associates. And this list of Trump associates he describes as 5 to 7 individuals relating to Trump, and he gave 3 names. So the 3 names that we have are Carter Page, Sergey Milian, and Richard Burt. And the only reason we didn't get the other names is because these 3 are apparently the only ones that are related in some fashion to the Alpha allegations. Now, it would have been really nice to actually get in there and see the evidence. Carter Page apparently had some sort of contact with somebody from Alpha. Richard Burt, I think, has a relationship with on the board. Sergey Milian, he was mentioned, and there was no details provided on why Sergey Milian was in this list of Trump associates. But because his name was actually mentioned at the trial, I think we can assume that it is because there was an Alpha-related allegation made for Sergey Milian. And that becomes really important because as it relates to Sergey, there actually is an allegation that we're aware of. There was a allegation out there that was passed to the FBI by Christopher Steele to Bruce Orr on September 23rd, just a couple days after Sussman. And this allegation was that Sergey Milian had used this Alpha server in some fashion just a couple weeks prior. So it is directly tying into the narrative. So his name was mentioned. We didn't get the context, but I think it's safe to assume it's something related to those allegations. So I wanted to hit that point real quick. Let's see here. A couple other points. We got a few names listed, obviously. So Zach Canner was one that I'm actually familiar with because when I was doing a deep dive months ago, I know he's a Block 3 guy. And Block 3 is this company that kind of ties it with Dino Capital, which is another one of Rodney Joffe's entities. So if that's confusing, that's actually going to be one of my first articles that I write on my Substack, which is I plan on launching this weekend. So I'm going to write an article and just kind of talk about all the different companies and all different people that are tied into them. But Zach Canner's a name that popped up as the CTO of Packet Forensics. So that was pretty interesting to me. And then I starred this one in my notes. So in describing the capabilities of Packet Forensics, Jared Novick from the stand actually said that they have internet sensors deployed around the world. And my ears perked up around that because we have allegations and we have some knowledge and there's a little bit of intuition behind it that Rodney Joffe has a role in the attribution of the DNC hacks to Russia. And so this line, internet sensors around the world, in describing the capabilities of Packet Forensics, probably ties in with that. And another piece that we actually got from Jared Novick in his testimony was that that Rodney Joffe worked on Russia-related cyber matters for the FBI. Now, they didn't go and explicitly ask about the DNC hack, But I don't think it's outlandish at all that he was asked or tasked by the FBI in some capacity to actually do work on the DNC hack. Now that becomes really interesting because we already know that Georgia Tech researchers in close proximity and close relationship with Rodney Joffe, namely Manos Antonakakis, David Dagan, which are involved in these alpha allegations, we know that they actually provided a body of work to Robert Mueller, Special Counsel Mueller, and that included analysis of APT 28 and APT 29. Now that's Fancy Bear and that's Cozy Bear. Those are two entities of Russia that supposedly hacked the DNC. They also provided a white paper on the DNC hack attribution. And we also have a piece that they analyze cryptocurrency transactions, which actually would seem to tie into the GRU and how they hacked the DNC. There's a little piece of it where they made some purchases with cryptocurrency. So I think that's where that might tie in. So that was pretty interesting. That could be a foreshadowing of what might come with Joffe. Let's see. Was there anything else I had known for Novik? So yes, a couple other quick points here. As it relates to these 5 to 7 names that are affiliated with Trump, this list of Trump associates from Joffe had their addresses, their spouse names, all their addresses, all the email addresses, basically like a whole deep dive of public and non-public information. So that that's not good. And this directive in their search basically was twofold: to go wide and then to go deep. So by wide, I mean, one of the queries that they had was anything alpha related. Now that's not all Alpha Bank. I mean, they searched alpha wide open, and anything that had alpha in the name went into a list, and then they went through and filtered out what was relevant, what was not. And then the second directive was to go deep. So by that's a relationship discovery analysis, and they took people like Trump associates or their wives, and then they went through and they went, I don't even know how many layers, however many they could, to define all the different relationships they might have interacted with, to the most of their capability and power, which is just a scary thing because, I tell you what, everyone on this chat has probably interacted with a Russian within the last 2 or 3 weeks, whether you actually knew it or not. There's somebody on Twitter that liked to post something like that. I mean, that's the kind of like stuff they were actually searching for. So that's obviously a very scary thing. And Novik and the team actually generated a code name for this project and searching for this on behalf of Rodney, and they called it Crimson Rhino. So keep that in mind. There is a report that they generated that was not introduced into the body of evidence. I believe they were going to, and they decided not to. Let's see here. I thought this was pretty interesting. I didn't hear about this before. Novik from the witness stand described a blow-up between Paul Vixie and Rodney Joffe, which apparently split a lot of people between the two teams. He didn't describe what actually caused it, but that's something I did not know. As far as I was aware, Vixie and Joffe remain close. I know their relationship goes back to the 1990s, and the formation of the internet at the time, but they were also both involved in direct marketing companies. So they had a long-standing relationship, and I don't know when that blow up really occurred or what caused it, but that was pretty interesting. That was new to me. Let's see. Yeah, and then obviously you went through all the different companies and stuff, and I talked about that on last chat, so I won't do that, and I'm going to write an article anyway. So let's see. Yeah, other than that, guys, I mean, I just wanted to touch on the big story, and I think this was Wednesday that I was still there, and it was the flash drive. So this came out of nowhere, but apparently, they pulled up this receipt just out of the blue in the middle of their examination, and Michael Sussman like walked around the corner. I'm not kidding. They had a map up there, and it was walking distance. It was like 2 minutes away around one corner, and he was there. he went to Staples and he bought flash drives. And I believe it was September 13th that he bought them. And then the data logs cut off on the 14th. So basically, they threw the data on these flash drives, and then he walked them over to the FBI. And what becomes really interesting is that uh, Sussman took down that receipt and he billed it to the Clinton campaign. And Hillary Clinton paid for the flash drives that contained the data related to Alpha Bank allegations that went to the FBI. She paid for it. So that's pretty amazing. I mean, if you're trying to try a case and the whole argument about the case centers on whether or not he represented a client, or more, with more certainty, whether he represented the Hillary Clinton campaign. Hillary paid for the flash drives that he brought. I mean, you can't get any more clear than that. So I thought that was a really powerful piece of testimony. A lot of people said they should have maybe opened up the trial with that, which might have been good, but it actually was really powerful at the end of the trial too, because it was like, it felt like the cherry on top, right? I mean, they might have struggled a little bit at the start of the trial, but they did. I thought the prosecution was really strong while I was out there, and they were just chugging along. And you thought, well, case is going really well, and then they pull this flash drive story out, and it's like, wait a minute. I mean, it just was really powerful to have something, still in the quiver that they came out late in the trial, slam that home. And I thought that was really, really good. So anyway, guys, see, we have a bunch of people here. Going to invite a few people. I mean, if you guys have any thoughts or anything you want to share, I'd love to hear from you guys. Oops. Hey, King, how's it going? Hey, King, you
I'm
there?
here. I'm sorry, I had my mic on mute. It was an
Oh,
interesting trial. I envy you being there.
yeah. I mean, it was an amazing experience for me. I'm really happy I went. I really enjoyed it.
Uh, for those of us who've been following it, that there were two pieces of really new information, or old information repackaged to become obvious what was going on. One was the like you just said, the Staples receipt for the thumb drives. That was awesome. The other was Rodney Jaffe's double or triple entree into the FBI with his sketchy DNS data.
Yeah, I mean, it's not looking good for Jaffe, is it? I mean, you can see how his trial might go. That's going to be pretty amazing.
I think I tweeted earlier today that in hindsight, based on what we heard, uh, Sussman could have indicted Jaffe with Sussman on a conspiracy charge.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could still see that, right?
It uh, He's going to have to add to it now. I don't think he can base it solely on the thumb drives and the triple entrees into the FBI. He's going to have to bring in some more people.
Yeah, I mean, there is kind of the anecdote. I don't know if it came up in trial that Sussman actually did work on the white paper itself. So maybe that's a little piece of something bigger.
Or maybe something will flip.
That'd be nice.
If they have to convict him first, though.
Yeah, I was there. Obviously, I went in the courtroom one of the days. The other 2 days, I was in the media room. But the day I was in the media, or excuse me, when I was in the courtroom, I made a conscious effort to really look at the jury, especially during the arguments, and really try to analyze, their faces and what they were thinking. And I was really impressed with them. I mean, they were taking notes. Um, they were very attentive. The only time they really got bored was on a certain cross examination by the defense, which was really duplicative of what the defense had cross examined somebody else the day before. So like it was understandable that they were bored because it wasn't new information. It's not like I'm not even saying the defense did a bad job. It was just same information. So I don't know. I mean, everybody's making a big deal about the DC jury thing, but and that's true. Like I'm not saying it's a definite conviction, but I don't see an acquittal. I could see a hung jury, but just the demeanor of some of the jurors, I think, you know, they're perking up at the right moments for the prosecution, is what I saw. So
Throughout my career, it's been a constant note of surprise and enjoyment that every jury I tried a case to took their job seriously. They tried to be fair. They tried to listen to both sides. They tried to hear the evidence and do as the judge instructed. It's impressive to sit through a jury trial and keep your eye on the jury. They are attentive. They believe that they're there to be the ultimate decider of the case, which they are. Anybody listening, if you ever get a chance to be on a jury, don't find an excuse not to do it. It's your civic duty, and you'll be uh, more impressed because of the experience with our system of justice.
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, do you have any other thoughts on what's developed over the last couple of days at all, or might take a few questions here?
Uh, I'd like to take questions.
Okay.
I don't have much more to say. I'm just, I'm when when you sit through a stressful trial, as we all have been watching it from afar. Uh, Once the jury goes out, it's time to have a stiff drink and just be patient and wait because you never know what they're going to do.
I mean, how about for like a false statement case? I mean, would you be surprised if deliberations went further than Tuesday, or would you expect a verdict on Tuesday?
You as experienced as I am, I've never been able to read a jury, and so I wasn't there to even look at them, so I can't say.
Fair enough. um, hey, JH, I see you have your hand up. What's up, man?
Hey, I guess I just have a quick question. I know an acquittal cannot be appealed. But I think if I'm not mistaken, there's also been cases where there's been acquittals, but a trial for some reason or another has been found to be defective. And am I correct in saying that an acquittal or a trial can be thrown out if the trial is found to be defective? For instance, maybe something like a bad jury instruction.
Yeah, that's called a mistrial.
Gotcha.
Where an error, where the defendant gets convicted, and then either the trial judge or court on appeal decides that there was major error in it could be many things. It could be an improper questioning by the prosecution. It could be defective jury instructions that misstate the law. It could be other things that happened during the trial that unfairly prejudiced the defendant. A mistrial would then be ordered, and it goes back to the trial court for a new trial. The prosecution has the option of either trying them a second time or saying, we did our best and we choose not to retry this case.
Can that only happen post verdict in the case of a conviction, or can that also happen in the case of an acquittal?
It can happen in the middle of the trial.
Yeah, but, I guess I'm thinking like specifically post verdict.
Well,
yeah.
No, if the verdict is acquittal, then that's the end of it.
So even if the trial is found to be defective, you can't call them post acquittal.
No, that would be double jeopardy.
Okay.
Let's see. Hey, Will, do you have anything you want to say? I'll come back to you. General Logos, what's up?
Hey, what's up, man? Thanks again for having me. So kind of a quick question here is, depending on what the outcome is going to be on Tuesday, what do we think is next for Durham? Do you think that depending on that outcome, he could go, harder and maybe bring some more cases, or do you think, if it doesn't go his way, he might just kind of be like, well, I guess I'm just kind of curious, where do you guys think things are going to go, and will the outcome of this case
Are you gonna walk for a while?
I'm going back and forth.
Okay.
And do we think that anything that happened during this case might make him go, hey, let's take a look at this now, or let's take a look at this now, regardless of the outcome or the verdict?
I definitely see Durham doing a lot more. So, I go back and forth. So if I change my mind here in a couple months, I mean, don't call me on it too bad. But, I guess early on, I was somebody that was really on board with more indictments or indictments with the FBI and, some of these characters. And then I've moved away from that over the past few weeks. And sitting through the trial and listening to the FBI agents testify and kind of the vibe and how everything's kind of laid out, I picture more indictments coming. Now, I still don't know if there's going to be indictments at the FBI or not. But listen to the FBI agents say, the FBI leadership told me to do it. The FBI leadership said, don't go interview this person. And especially, I mean, there's a specific text, I think from, I can't remember. I have it in my notes. But one of the agents was like, in this text message, they said, we are going to interview David Dagan. And obviously there's a lot more discussion about it. But this text was explicit. It says, we are going to interview David Dagan. And then, in the trial, they ask them, like, okay, this text says this. Why didn't you go interview them? And they said, the FBI headquarters told me not to. And what's amazing is that there's so many descriptions of it being the next logical step and everything else we've seen. So that puts the FBI leadership in the crosshairs. And, I think King even kind of mentioned this earlier, and I think I mentioned it a couple days ago myself. We talked a lot about the potential of there being two conspiracies. If Durham's going to do anything with the FBI, we've talked about it being two conspiracies. One is going to be around the Clinton characters, Joffe, people like that, perhaps. And then we always thought, well, the second conspiracy that might relate to the FBI, if it happens, would be like January 2017 onward, where their case fell apart. They didn't have probable cause. They didn't have evidence that was, supportive of continuing an investigation. And we always thought that would be the starting point. But I have to tell you, I mean, we have all these emails and everything in October, September, October, and it feels different now. And to hear that the FBI leadership was taking such an interest in these allegations, and they were so involved in the direction of this case, this Alpha-related case, I am going to open the door or leave open the door of the possibility of this being one conspiracy. And we might find that there are ties between, the private cell, whether it's Joffe or the Clinton campaign, and the FBI agents. And, I'll throw this out there. I mean, I have this FOIA document or this FOIA response telling me there are hundreds of communications between Hillary Clinton herself, Jake Sullivan, Jennifer Palmieri, Robbie Mook, and President Obama or his chief of staff or Susan Rice in the heart of the election season. Hundreds of communications. And it's like, okay, are they talking about the election? Maybe. I mean, is it small talk? Are they getting advice about the election? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. But if we get one email that says anything about any Steele dossier allegations or any Alpha Bank stuff, I mean, it's going to blow this thing wide open. I just, it feels like this is still getting bigger. It doesn't feel like Durham's about done. I think Durham has a lot more that he's going to do, and we'll just have to see. King, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just keep in mind that if
All
Durham
four defense
opens up
lawyers.
the possibility of proving a conspiracy for the pre-election conduct of the FBI, he's going to be met with the defense that, well, we had to downplay whatever we were doing because we didn't want to impact the election. So that's why the investigation went on so long. That's why it was so low key. That's why we relied mainly on confidential human sources, talking to people like Papadopoulos and Carter Page. We didn't want to go out and interview third-party witnesses for fear that word about our investigation would leak out and affect the election. That's going to be their story.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw the difficulty that Durham had in this case, where he's trying to prosecute Sussman on a simple false statement, and the witnesses he has to bring on are FBI agents that are under investigation themselves, and the defense is ripping them apart about the decisions that they made, and that's going to be the difficulty that Durham's just going to have. In any case that he brings from here on, it's going to be, kind of there's always going to be some of that in any case that Durham brings, I think, from here on out.
Critical to any case like that would be evidence that somebody inside the FBI was feeding his fellow agents with false or misleading information. That is, if they knew, for example, that Jaffe was wearing several hats to corroborate his own work, if they knew that and concealed it, but helped him do it, that you can drag people like that into a conspiracy charge. As far as the higher ups are concerned, until they became more active in the paper trail, which I would point to what they did with General Flynn, followed by that meeting in March with the DOJ. It would be tough to make a case against them. After the election, however, things became hot for them, and you have Comey and McCabe actively pursuing a phony investigation.
Hey guys.
Yeah. Hey Will, what's up?
Oh, thank you. Can you explain real quick, just the white paper and how it relates to the case? I mean, I know it's a government document of some sort. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, so the white paper was prepared by the Alpha, Georgia Tech Sussman researchers. Um, so there's a couple different white papers. The first white paper, which Sussman actually contributed to, is more like a Wikipedia type search. It's background information on the oligarchs that run or own Alpha Bank and things of that nature. So to that extent, it's mostly public source information. Then there's other white papers, which are much more, there's a technical analysis, which breaks down these data logs that are provided and crafts this narrative of this secret communications channel between Trump and Putin.
Got it. Okay. And thank you, King, for for answering these questions. Regarding trials, attorneys. It's fascinating. You're excellent. And I wanted to know, because you led into the fact that some of some of the FBI agents might be a little bent, because that's what I was assuming, during the trial, because they were so unhelpful to Durham. Is that where you're going?
No, I'm not surprised that they were unhelpful. They have been under a microscope since Horowitz's examination, and they are naturally defensive about everything that went on. Probably for very good reason, because their fingerprints are on all of the bad stuff that the FBI did. Durham, it appears Durham is not going after them right now. He's probably after the higher ups. Although I was a little surprised about Priestap. He of all the witnesses, he would have been the one I would say would be the most likely to be in Durham's crosshairs. Uh, Maybe that's still a possibility, but uh, if Durham is going after FBI, it's going to be higher ups plus those who had direct involvement in testimony to Congress, te- uh, interviews with the Mueller team, and false representations to the FISA court.
Okay. So we're talking, Weissman maybe wrapped up into this, possibly.
No idea.
Okay. And then, of course, what does Strzok's text from August 8th, 2016, saying the White House is running this?
Yeah,
You're at
it's something like that.
you're asking me if Obama is in the crosshairs. I doubt it. That
No,
would
not Obama, but just some of his underlings and the staff, and Rice, particularly, or Susan Power or Samantha Power, somebody, one of their goons, that would be pulling off some of this, undercover, underhanded, nefarious, uh, election manipulation.
not without two or three really strong whistleblowers.
Okay. Yeah, because you've got all their testimony, that came out that said that there was no evidence of collusion, conspiracy, or whatever Cash Patel said, the three C's, or coordination. So okay, that's good to know. Because I don't think the FBI it should be let off the hook on any of this, because they were terrible. So thanks very much, guys. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, thank you. Have a nice weekend.
Yeah, excellent work again, Undead and
Thank
King
you.
and everyone. You guys are terrific. It's amazing we have this ability to chat like this. I love it.
I'm glad. Thank you. That's the whole goal, is kind of share the information that we have and bring awareness to it. So, let's see, who else we got? Savant Marine, what's up, man?
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I'll just mirror the other caller. What a great information. My question centers around 2 points. One, can Garland shut off the money if Durham wants to keep going? Doesn't he have to go back to Garland to get the money? Who's going to give him the money to keep doing it? And my other question centered around that is, it seemed that if they went scorched earth, kind of like Mueller and Wiseman did, that they'd probably get better results. And I'm trying to find especially in law enforcement and working in law enforcement, I'm having a hard time understanding this concept of why they're not doing this and why they've not kind of, I'm not saying return the favor, but get to the meat of the matter. You know what I mean? And I'll let you guys talk. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So, as to point number one, yes, Attorney General Garland could shut off the money. He could fire Durham outright. Um, but I don't see that happening, especially now after Durham has gotten a couple indictments and there are strong indications of a conspiracy. And you actually see some coverage in left leaning outlets now about the trial and about everything else is going on. So, I mean, the political capital of getting rid of Durham right now would just be too immense, especially we're looking at midterms in another 5 or 6 months. Like it's election season. They don't, especially the Biden administration, they don't need anything else to weigh down their poll numbers right now. So any hint that he is impeding Durham's work is just going to cause a nightmare for them. So I don't really see that happening anymore. As to your other question, um, why doesn't he go scorched earth? I mean, that's a good question. You know, I think it's Durham's, modus operandi where he goes, for every detail he can get, and he's going to have the strongest case possible when he goes to trial. And I don't know if King has other thoughts on that. Some scorched earth would be good to create some pressure on some people and maybe get a few more people to flip that way. But collecting the evidence, if he feels like he can pull more evidence out of the FBI, or he can pull more subpoenas and get some more documents that have a more complete case. I mean, the real issue is, and hopefully King will chime in, once you indict somebody, your ability to collect additional evidence is really limited. And, that's a big problem when you're trying to pursue a case like this where you don't have necessarily a whole lot of evidence, or it's so wide ranging, you don't know what you might need to go find in a few more months. Like this Alpha case was always thought to be a relatively small component of Russiagate, and now it's shown to be a pretty massive operation that they had going. And the people that it's led to, like Karamitis and his role at DARPA and things like that. I mean, if you indicted somebody, 9 or 10 months ago, your ability to collect evidence would be limited, and you might find something out where you want to go get evidence, and you're going to be impeded to some extent, at least. Presumably, if it is a new charge, you can still collect some evidence, but it does limit you a little bit. So, King, I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. On the first question, A.G. Garland has approved Durham's budget for this fiscal year, which is enough for him to do the Sussman trial and presumably the Danchenko's trial, which is coming up later this year. Beyond that, I don't know whether Durham has enough resources to go after the big guys, as we've discussed, or whether he's going to have to go look for more money. I seriously doubt politically that Durham could shut him off or fire him before the midterms. After the midterm, your guess is as good as mine. He may decide that it's time for Durham to finish his report and close up shop. We'll just have to wait and see. On the other issue, a lot of the more aggressive law enforcement procedures that the Mueller team used, in fact, most of them more aggressive stuff, you don't see a lot in ordinary white collar investigations, criminal investigations. Those are like a wiretap or a search warrant. Those you see more often when a crime is ongoing, there are lives or property at stake. People stand to lose a lot of money, or their livelihood, or their lives. So the more aggressive law enforcement tools can be and are often used to speed up your investigation. Durham came in, though, well after the conduct that he's investigating was over. So uh, it, it would be surprising to me that a wiretap or a search warrant, for example, would really gain him much, uh, because if somebody's going to toss evidence, they'd have already done it by the time he got appointed. So he's taking the path of a what I call a traditional white collar prosecutor in using his grand jury subpoenas, uh, getting documents from all the government agencies, interviewing interviewing scores of witnesses and calling them to the grand jury. That's the way. It's plotting and it takes a while, but that's the way uh, good, well-respected prosecutors work in cases like this.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you. Let's see here. Let's go to Eric. What's up?
Undead, great job, man. Give us a sense for, and I'm watching the media cover the Depp case in detail, right, every day. What's going on in the media room? You're there a couple days. I know you departed, but give me a sense for, and I thought the New York Times reporter did a decent job of the play-by-play, but what's going on with the media? And at what point do they have to pick this up and actually provide context as to what's happening here and what happened?
Yeah, so that's a great question.
To add to that just a little bit, I'm curious what reactions were in the media room too.
Sure. Okay. So there's like 25 or 26 people in the media room from every major outlet and, a lot of others too. And yeah, I mean, at what point do they start covering it? I mean, at least for the trial, I think there's a pretty significant size or quantity of articles out there now, which is good. And the question is, once this verdict comes in, does it lead to more coverage or does it not? Now, obviously, as compared to like a Mueller trial, when they tried, somebody related to Trump for matters unrelated to Russia collusion, I mean, media coverage was relentless. And, 24/7, it was, we got him now, or, Manafort's going to have to cut a deal. He's going to have to give up Trump 24/7, right? We're obviously not getting that level of coverage. But yeah, at some point, there is going to be a watershed moment where it does blow up into that level of coverage. I don't know when it is, but that day is coming. And, part of the issue is that all these networks have at least one reporter that was talking to Fusion GPS. And that's where all those stories came from to begin with. And as it turns out, when they had Adam Schiff on their show saying he's seen evidence of Russia collusion, apparently, he was getting information from Fusion GPS too. We have at least one email indicating that in July 2016. So I don't know. There will be a watershed moment of coverage. It might take a conspiracy charge to do it. Maybe when Joffe gets indicted, maybe that starts getting the momentum going. Obviously, Igor Danchenko should be much more significant, but I don't know if that'll be the moment. I do get a little bit more, as I don't know how to describe it. I guess, I get a few more DMs in my box these days. I do get some more media type requests where they're poking around some stuff. They want to get some answers to a few things. So that's good. That's encouraging. I think there are going to be some productions of trying to tell the Russiagate story. I'm aware of some stuff in motion, so that's going to be good. Um, and then as to the question of the media room itself, I mean, it's so hard to describe, guys. I mean, there's a lot more noise than I thought there would be. I mean, there's audible reactions. Nobody was withholding their reactions to stuff. People were laughing, um, laughing at some of the stuff that was said, which is, they're pointing out how ridiculous some of the stuff's. So, like the flash drive thing. And I'm not doing a good job with this explanation, so I apologize. But the flash drive thing, I mean, that blew up in the media, and everybody was in shock, audibly gasped. Everybody was leaning up, and you can just hear the thunder of keyboards and, pounding on their phones trying to get tweets and stuff out because everybody understood what that meant. And there was a few moments like that. And I have a sense in the media room that there are some people that don't get it. And that was like maybe 20 and 25% of the room where they just don't get it. Somebody in that room was just totally against it. Like I could just tell she was just not with it. And she was actually talking about Manafort at one point. It was just insane stuff. And then there's a few guys in there that are just like teasing some of the stuff that the defense is coming up with, which is just ridiculous. But then, you have Hosenball in there, Mark Hosenball, and he's in some of the emails with Fusion GPS. He was mentioned in the trial multiple times. And that's where it became really embarrassing because, like, there's this email from Fusion GPS to Hosenball introduced, and everybody, like, looked at Hosenball at the same time, and somebody, like, cracked a joke, like, Hosenball, you're going to have to answer questions or whatever. And everybody laughed at Hosenball. And then, like, it was like a couple hours later, we come back from break, and, like, out of the blue, Hosenball just offers this weird explanation of, the emails or whatever, like he didn't know or something like that. And then, like, there's a couple other moments with Hosenball in there, and the Hosenball got up, when his email was introduced at one point, and he got up and he actually walked over to the TV to take a closer look. Like, it's so, like, it's awkward. It's like, dude, that, Hosenball is the story right now. That he's the one you should be writing about. And I don't know, man. I don't know when that watershed moment will be that blows us up into a story that, commands that level of attention. I've always said this, and I think people get annoyed with it, but if 40% of the country knew what a few hundred of us know, this would be the number one political story right now because you just can't hide from it. Once you get into the minutia of the story, it's damning, it's compelling, it's clear that there is a conspiracy in there, and more and more it's likely that that conspiracy is going to be charged, and we're going to run into the situation. I think Clinton operatives will be charged. I'm going to say that right now. I think Clinton operatives will be charged in this scheme criminally. And by then, that's going to be the watershed moment for sure. If we don't see anything else, that should be it. So that was an extremely long answer to a much more simple question. So,
process crime or something more sinister, do you think?
Conspiracy.
I would agree. It's either a conspiracy case that would get the media's attention and or a major government contract fraud case against Jaffe and maybe some helpers of his. That would be a big deal.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, like, Rodney Jaffe should be a huge indictment whenever that happens. A lot of people actually know him in the media, so we'll see, I guess. Glenn Simpson, somebody like that, and the Fusion GPS guys, Christopher Steele could potentially be indicted, especially with Danchenko already kind of under the thumb screws. I mean, any of those indictments, Christopher Steele being indicted, like, that should be a monumental news story. But more and more, I mean, I hope we see documentaries. We have some conservative media outlets out there, or at least some entities that pretend to be neutral. where are their documentaries? I mean, one of the things that really ticked me off was like 6 or 7 months ago, George Stephanopoulos of ABC News actually did a documentary on Christopher Steele, and it was like a straight rehabilitative thing, and they presented him, without scrutiny, didn't challenge his answers at all, and it was one of the most ridiculous things because we've known for years now that this is a concocted story. This is a fake story, and there's a lot of questions. You got to scrutinize these people. You get them in a chair, and then you don't push back on any answers. And to give another documentary to supporting the narrative, the Russiagate narrative, and there hasn't been one single documentary. There hasn't been anything like that on a national scale, detailing the other side, which is just insane. So, JH, what's up, man?
Yeah, I guess going forward for Durham, I guess, something that's sort of been surprising to me is like all these people that were involved, many of them haven't given testimony to Congress. And I know, like perjury charges in congressional testimony are not something that has typically been done. It's sort of been left up to Congress to deal with that. But, in light of like Roger Stone, being indicted and convicted for lying to Congress, it just seems like, as Durham learns more and more about what happened, it seems like he'd have a gold mine of information that these people, testified to Congress that, I'm sure there's false statements in there and, perjury all over the place. And I guess I'm just surprised that we haven't seen any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Durham wants to fill up his docket with process crimes and simple false statement cases when, he's really trying to compile like a conspiracy case.
Yeah, I mean, they aren't really process crimes. It would be like if somebody lied to Durham, that would be a process crime. I suppose it's a crime in some sort of process, but these were crimes that were committed basically to conceal the conspiracy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I'm impressed that Durham, right off the bat, what Mueller did was he started, indicting people who lied to him, so I mean, it's that's been kind of impressive that Durham isn't relying on cheap tricks like that, but it's still, it just seems, if he does go the conspiracy route, it seems like, perjury to Congress, in some of the like late 2017, 2018 testimony could be a way to go, but I'm sure he's aware of that. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the articles I'm going to write for Substack is kind of going through like Sullivan and John Podesta and people like that, where they said they had no knowledge of any of these operations in the Steele dossier or anything until after the campaign was over. And, they're portraying it as they hired Perkins Coie to do opposition research, and then they had no knowledge basically after that. Like, they might have understood that Fusion GPS was contracted to assist with opposition research, but then they pretend like they knew nothing about Christopher Steele. And, it's just not true. I mean, we got testimony this week that members of the campaign were briefed on allegations related to Alpha Bank. Now, it seems to be a safe assumption that they were also briefed on some of the Steele stuff. And I thought Robbie Mook, I mean, they went to Hillary Clinton and told her that they wanted to push a story into the media on this Trump Alpha server. And Hillary Clinton personally approved that plan. So the idea that they had no knowledge on the campaign of all this stuff going on, it just doesn't pass the test anymore. And Durham needs a pretty low threshold of evidence to be able to charge, some of those lies. Like John Podesta, who was sitting next to Mark Elias, by the way, which is just totally ridiculous. Like, Mark Elias is the one in all these meetings and all these emails. And, even if Podesta was telling the truth, which I think is pretty clear he's not, like, Elias is sitting there, he knows every detail about what happened. So I don't know. I'm certainly going to take a look at the testimony of Elias as well. Yeah, I mean, I understand the point you're making, but we'll see, I guess. Willie, what's up, man?
Oh, hi. No, I just got one question for Ryan, being in the court. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure.
Is it pronounced Perkins Coy or Cooey? Because I've never got around that.
I've heard it's cooey.
I have no idea.
Yeah, no. I just wondered whether you'd heard some testimony and whether it's Coy or Cooey. And
I heard both.
right,
So
okay. No,
yeah, I have no idea.
it's just been like for 4 or 5 years, been trying to work out how to pronounce it. And then I've got another question for King. So the jury, they went to deliberations this afternoon, and they're not sequestered over Memorial Weekend. King, how do you think that's going to affect the verdict in the Amber Turd trial?
Hopefully it won't. I've seen juries take a weekend off, never a long weekend off like this. And oftentimes the judge will ask the jury on like midday Friday, do you people want a weekend, or would you rather spend some time on Saturday to deliberate? And I'm going to give you Sunday off, but what about Saturday? And the jury kind of will let the judge know how they're going and how it's going. So that wasn't done here. There was a hard stop by the court. So it's anybody's guess as to whether it's going to make it more likely they'll reach a verdict, giving each of them a 3-day holiday to think about it on their own, or whether that's going to make them pretty much start over in the deliberation on Tuesday. So we don't know.
So the thing is, there's 2 big trials which are also from allegations or something made 6 years ago. There's the Amber Heard and the Donny Depp thing today, and the Sussman, which the juries went off within an hour of each other today, and they're both being left over Memorial Weekend, which I find odd. But I think it's 3 days in. If you go back 6 years ago, we didn't have this social media. We didn't have like a phone which bleeps every time a tweet goes off, or a Facebook friend or something. So one, I think the Memorial Weekend is long, 3 days, and 2, they're very, very high profile, and I just can't understand. If you went back to O.J. Simpson and, I can't remember the exact year, but that sort of high level of media, they sequester the juries, and are they going to be honest about not reading any media when they come back, or is Rodney Joffe going to be monitoring their DNS traffic?
Jaffe, I don't trust a bit, but monitoring the traffic, I'm not sure helps him in any way. There was a surprising lack of press coverage and not very much social media coverage on this. So I sincerely doubt that anybody on the jury is going to be terribly influenced by media reports or even social media.
Let's see here. MB, what's up, man?
What's up, Undead? Welcome back.
Thank you. I appreciate you naming my Substack. That was nice of you.
Is that the way the poll's going?
Dude, you crushing everybody. You're crushing the second best by 40 points.
That's fantastic. Sorry, my clock was going on. Well, that's a good deal. Yeah, I just was wanted to jump in. Exactly, that was what I was wanted to talk about real quick. Was I was surprised that there was so little media coverage. Well, I guess that's not really surprising, but it was pretty tepid as well. It wasn't really. I didn't see as many of the missiles flying at the Durham probe than I expected, given that the Hillary people are kind of in the crosshairs as much as they were in this trial. And I'm just kind of guessing, but my take on that is maybe a lot of the media and a lot of the Dems are just like, you know what, Hillary, you're done. We have no more use for you, and we didn't really like you that much anyway. So if some of your people go down and you have a really bad stain on your reputation, we're not gonna die on this hill for you. So I hope that's what happens, and I hope that this comes out as kind of a if there's a conviction that there's a fair this Durham's onto something, and we have to let him go and carry on with it. I don't have high hopes that that's going to happen, but I think there is some hope.
Yeah, I think you have a good point there. And it kind of ties in with AG Barr in that article that was kind of floating around there. AG Barr kind of is assessing that the Biden administration, they don't want to protect Hillary. Nobody wants their legacy to be tied to Hillary Clinton anymore. And the media has been in the bag for Hillary against Trump and, promoting this Russiagate stuff for too long. I mean, multiple years of this, there has to be some fatigue there. And I don't think they want to carry water for them anymore. So yeah, I agree with your assessment.
If I may, I followed the two New York Times reporters who live tweeted the trial, and they were, to me, surprisingly thorough and objective for the most part. I didn't detect a huge amount of bias one way or the other. They played it straight. They one thing made me chuckle. They were proud of the fact that of all the papers, New York Times was the one that declined to run the headlines at the end of October that about the Alpha Bank hoax. Instead they ran with the story that the FBI so far hadn't found anything, and and I think Charlie Savage was saying, the prosecutor forgot to mention that, but basically holding his paper up as a model for catching on to the hoax.
Yeah, I caught that same thing from Savage. I mean, yeah, a little over the top, right? I mean, Eric Lichtblau was like the seminal character in this whole story, and obviously interacting and totally in the bag with Fusion GPS. And obviously he didn't run the story down, because if he did, he would have known that the pings were faked. And despite the assertions made by the Clinton campaign, not all these cyber researchers he was being put in contact with were actually independent. And once you get to a qualified independent researcher, like they actually got to with Cryptia, they shoot it down immediately. I mean, it's amazing to me to see Rob Graham and Cryptia, and then, immediately at the FBI and immediately at the CIA, they shoot this stuff down immediately. They say, no, like, this is incomplete. It doesn't support the narrative. One point that I thought keyed in on was this server in question was configured for outgoing only. So it couldn't receive the pings that were being sent from Alpha Bank and Spectrum Health. Like, it's impossible that the pings exist, which is just amazing. So you take that, and it's like, how is Elgin Camp posting on Empty Wheels blog the other day, like still championing this allegation. Like it's embarrassing at this point. So let's see here. Oops. Chuck, what's up, man? Hey, Chuck, you there?
This is me, Vince.
Hey, Vince, what's up, man?
Hey, number one, thanks guys for everything and staying on it, and you're serving your country, so thank you for serving your country. Question I would have is, and I'm sorry to get down speculation street, but I guess I'm being a little bit lazy on this Friday. Jaffe McCabe Comey, King. Question is for King and Undead. Percentage chance of indictments and timing. That would be my question.
Man, that's a tough road on Speculation Street. They don't keep it paved very often. Jaffe, I would actually say 100% chance of indictment. I don't. Timing is just a crazy hard question. I don't even know if he'll be indicted within the next year. It could be another year on Jaffe. Andrew McCabe, I would say 60% chance of indictment. No idea on timing. Comey, I would say probably 20% chance of indictment and no idea on timing. So,
okay, thanks. And I think you described yourself as a crickety old lawyer. King, what do you have to say on Speculation Street? And we all understand that you're speculating.
Well, I have to pull out my dartboard and darts and start tossing them. I don't know. Hard to say. Here's the way I look at it. You've got. I agree with Undead. I think Jaffe and particularly his involvement in multi-million-dollar government contracts and his misuse of data coming out of that exposes him massively to a major fraud indictment concerning his misuse of government contracting powers and procurement. So I wouldn't say 100%. Nothing's 100% in the law. So I'll put him at maybe 90%. As to the higher ups at the FBI, McCabe and Comey, I think you first have to begin with what are the chances that any conspiracy charge is brought against anybody inside the government. And then the second question is, how far up would that go? On the first question, I've always been 50-50. I think there's a case there to be made, but it may not be politically palatable to the Attorney General, and it may take more resources than Durham has. If he does bring it, let's say it lands, the coin flip lands on the side of he's bringing a conspiracy. How high up does it go? I'd say minimum McCabe. I think odds are very good that McCabe would be part of that conspiracy. Comey, not so much, but not out of the realm of possibility.
So, King, thank you so much. And speculating, I know it's something you don't like to do. I noticed the change, King, about midweek, or maybe it was Wednesday or so, when you started to talk about the different pathways that Jaffe was exploiting, right? Was my instinct correct that you kind of really thought Jaffe was a lot more likely to get indicted when all that was revealed. And it also seems like kind of what you're alluding to is the biggest surfaced area is Jaffe. That's kind of really the next element, and then bridges will unfold from there. That's my question.
Yes, that's my instinct talking. Because the news about Jaffe misusing uh, his CHS status to sneak in basically corroboration for the sketchy data that he gave through Sussman. Uh, that that's a problem for him. I mean, Durham can't let that lie like that. He has to do something, and it's possible that he had inside help as well. If he did, that's a conspiracy that could be brought. Conspiracy case that could be brought. Straight up, it's beyond the 5-year statute of limitations for anything except uh, major government fraud involving a government contract. So there's a lot of facts relating to Jaffe that Durham knows and we don't. So it does put us into the realm of speculation.
One thing I want to chime in there with regard to Jaffe's continuing exposure here is I would not be surprised to see him thrown to the wolves and portrayed in the media as the bad actor that duped us all. I said a couple months ago that I thought he was a useful idiot, and it'll be interesting to see what happens when he stops being useful to those people in power. The facts probably support a lot of that, and I would expect to see the media sort of close ranks to make sure that it ends there as well. So that could be one aspect of how the Jaffe story unfolds.
The problem with that is that Jaffe was doing it explicitly for the Clinton campaign. He wasn't an independent operation at all. And, you throw him to the wolves, you're throwing the Clinton campaign overboard because, as I understand it, Jaffe was in contact with Jake Sullivan directly on the campaign. And it's just not something he would be tasked with to go out and do himself. Now, one avenue that I think is interesting is kind of hinted at trial as well. Jaffe was a powerful executive at News Story, and obviously he had other contracts through his various businesses. But specifically, News Star lost half of their NOPAC revenue, which is like the number portability contract. And that, as a $1 billion public company, to lose half your revenue is just like a death knell. I mean, you just can't do that. And presumably he had a lot of shares, or obviously he had a lot of power at the company. But if he could help Hillary Clinton get into power in exchange for the Clinton administration reversing that ruling and awarding that contract to News Star, that's a win-win right there. And I thought it was interesting because it wasn't really explored, and it is pretty ancillary, when they discussed the fees that News Star paid to Perkins Coie. Now, it's kind of like a round peg in a square hole because it didn't seem to fit in anywhere in the testimony, but they did introduce that into evidence. And I struggle with the numbers. I don't have them handy here, but as I recall, it was like $694,000 in legal fees paid from News Star to Perkins Coie in 2014. I think 694,000, something like that. And then it was like 1.1 million in 2015. And then it was like 1.8 million in 2016. And then into 2017, I think it was like 2.3 million or something like that. So obviously Perkins Coie has a lot of interest in helping News Star as well. And I think that's kind of what he was hinting at. But, that is also within speculation road. So
it's really interesting. Jaffe is really kind of like the bellwether and really kind of like the focal point to see how these things unfold. It would be interesting to know what Jaffe is currently doing now with his financial assets or structures, because that might be an indicator towards what he's expecting. But guys, thanks for serving your country. I'll step back, let some other people chime in, and it's just you're doing a great service to us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. I really appreciate that.
I think that there's more to that story with New Star losing its portability. And didn't Joffe and Sussman go to visit Baker on a different occasion to talk about that? I don't think we know nearly enough about it, but I'm sure that there's some really juicy stuff in there.
Yeah, and I think you're right about that. I think they did bring that to Sussman's attention. And people forget sometimes Sussman was actually the outside counsel for New Star. So, yeah, it's well within the realm of possibility. There's some shady stuff going on with New Star. And obviously, I always bring this one up because it's an absolutely insane story. But, the Vatican and a particular representative at the Vatican sent $2 million to New Star's Melbourne division. And I'm going to write an article this weekend about this. But that was within 2016, 2017. And the purpose for those transfers has been determined to be fraudulent, but we've never gotten more information about it. And I pursued FOIAs in Australia for this, and I haven't been successful for it. But that is going to be really, really interesting if that turns out to be related to Russiagate. To have transfers from the Vatican to New Star related to Russiagate, you can't, if you were in Hollywood, you wouldn't even come up with that story. But more and more, it does seem plausible that might be connected.
Hey, Ryan, I wanted to ask you another question, if I can.
Sure.
In regards to the runway, kind of in the backstory on Durham's investigation, where it goes from here.
Sure.
So I cards on the table. I'm just as excited about it as the rest of the crew here seems to think that this might be the watershed that kind of gets him some momentum. But, Attorney General Barr's comments on the Blaze the other night, where he was talking about how Durham was kind of hemmed in by COVID, could not go out and do a lot of investigative work and all that sort of stuff. I don't know if you saw the excerpts of that. It was kind of interesting. That got me thinking. And if you really think about it, Durham didn't seem to be showing a whole lot of fruit. Now, we've all assumed that that's because he's close hold, but he wasn't showing any fruit until the Alpha lawsuit started to go and depositions in that started to come out. So I wonder, and I guess my question is, to what extent do you think Durham's team is really uncovering and investigating stuff? And what extent are they just kind of prosecuting what's fallen in their lap?
Yeah, so this is a pretty important point because Empty Wheel's actually gotten this wrong a lot, and she's portrayed it incorrectly to a lot of her followers. But Durham is not really drafted off the Alpha Civil case too much. I think he was possibly hoping to get a few more documents that he could have gotten out of the Alpha case. He might have desired for the Alpha Civil case to break down the privilege claims of Fusion GPS. That might have been something he was banking on a little bit. I don't have any other excuse for why Durham didn't break down that privilege sooner himself. But that might be possible. But as it relates to the Alpha claims as a whole, there is an important distinction here. So the Alpha team learned of it through the Daniel Jones deposition, which came in 2021, I believe, but it was like much later in the case. And Durham knew about this Alpha stuff much sooner than that. So Durham didn't get this from the Alpha Civil case. Durham had this towards the end of 2019 is where I would place it, because we have emails from May and June of 2020 where they're referencing conversations going back several months at that time, where they're inquiring of David Dagan at Georgia Tech, and we have indications from Ron Joffe's filings where he was reached out to 2 years ago. So by early 2020, Durham was on this, and the Alpha Civil case was much later. So Durham was developing information by that time. He was a little bit slow with it. You can tell that because somebody like Angelos Karamitis, who was at DARPA at the time, Durham didn't reach out to him until February 2021, I believe, and didn't set up like a more formal investigation until or more formal interview until August, I believe. So Durham was a little bit slow on that, but yeah, I'll leave it there. Hey, J.S. Cook, what's up?
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Wait a second. Stage fright. Oh yeah. Andy McCarthy. Did y'all see him today on the news?
I did not. I saw that he had an interview. I didn't watch it
All
or
right.
anything though.
So I mean, I guess this goes to the long weekend discussion and the jury and their percolations. But and he was being asked about Sussman and taking a stand, and not taking a stand, and he said Sussman didn't really take the stand because the defense was doing such a good job, and he had it covered. And then he kind of proceeded to lay out this rationale as to why Sussman would be acquitted. And it goes to the fact that it was all that his visit to Baker was in service to this wider interest on Russiagate. It was a wink thing. That his visit wasn't material. I'm paraphrasing, because everybody knew he worked for DNC and DCCC and his Hillary ties. Everybody knew that, and they chose to use the fact that he withheld that relationship as cover. And so he's sort of laying out this rationale for some woman whose daughter is on a crew team, to use that says basically we can't acquit Sussman because he was really just playing his expected role. And so the lie was not a lie, and it wasn't material because anyway, that was the logic. It's twisted as it is. It's from Andy McCarthy, and here's a recipe for disaster. Although I wouldn't, if it goes that way, it'd be neat to see jurors standing on the front steps saying we couldn't convict him of this because he was part of a big play by the seventh floor. So that would
Yep. Yeah.
But anyway.
So yeah, I mean, I want to be careful because there's people in our corner that are friends with McCarthy, but he has been kind of wrong on this for a long time now. And before Sussman was indicted, before Danchenko was indicted, he thought Durham was done, and that's what he was writing for months. Was Durham's wrapping up? Durham's done. Durham will have like a report, and then we got indictments, and then he's like, Sussman will be acquitted. Sussman will be acquitted, and yada yada. And I don't know what he's up to anymore. I don't see an acquittal really in the cards. There can be a hung jury for sure, and I'm not going to underplay like the impact of a DC jury. You don't know. I don't know. But I wouldn't latch on to any of those points really too much. And I don't think Durham's close to being done at all. Durham's going to do a lot more here, and McCarthy's certainly not alone in being a little bit off base on this one. But there'll be more of that.
Yeah,
So.
thanks.
Undead and King, I could ask one last question. As far as the Sussman trial is concerned, would you? I'm asking both of you. Would you say Durham's primary objective was one, use as Trojan horse to expand and gather data for the wider conspiracy, and two, a guilty verdict? How do you see that? How would you see the order of his priority or objectives in this trial?
Well, whenever you indict somebody, for a felony like this one, you're trying to get a conviction. That's your number one responsibility, your number one goal. He had a secondary aim here. I think he believed that to get a conviction in D.C., he needed to tell a bigger story than just a single false statement. And he was successful for the most part. The judge cut him back on it somewhat, which was not a surprise to me. But he got a lot in on this single 1001 charge. So I think he had those two goals in mind, and he did a very good job of succeeding in both. I'm not saying that he's going to get his conviction, but he certainly has a solid, he has a better chance than Andy McCarthy would suggest.
So Durham would not have brought this charge if he didn't feel that he could get the conviction. In other words, Durham would not have brought this forward just to unravel it more. He wouldn't have done it for that.
He would not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's see who else we have here. J.S. Cook, did you get a chance to ask your question? I don't recall. Let's see here.
Yeah, sorry. I got my question answered. And I wasn't trying to disparage Andy McCarthy. He's kind of like Jekyll and Hyde to me. I love him and hate him, and it just kind of blows like the wind. But I'm glad he's around. I'm glad he's around. He's good for laughs.
I watch Andy and read what he writes, and he's a pretty smart lawyer and very well respected. And where I think he missed something in this one was the Jaffe aspect. The prosecution had not one, but two mic drop incidents in this trial. First came when they put into evidence the Staples receipt for the thumb drives that's supplied by Jaffe. The data that went on the drives came from Jaffe. The second mic drop incident came in rebuttal when the prosecution lawyer, to end his whole closing argument, he reminded the jury that Jaffe, one, put the data on the thumb drive and then put his confidential human source hat on and went to an FBI agent, not his handler, and gave that agent more data to in effect make it appear that the data is coming from two different independent sources, unconnected to each other, and he's trying to corroborate. That was powerful in my mind, and Andy didn't touch on that.
And not just data. It was like two IP addresses, wasn't it?
Yes.
And what
one's
were
in
they?
Russia. One's in Russia. But I don't think that came out.
Yeah, I don't think that was ever discussed.
Hey, I got a question for King about that. What was the defense thinking putting Grasso on the stand in the first place? What were they hoping to get out of him? I thought the prosecution would have put him on the stand.
I'm with you. I'm surprised the prosecution didn't put him on the stand, or didn't put Jaffe's handler on the stand, or both. I don't know what they were thinking, but it kind of killed half their case, the defense.
Yeah, unless they were in some way trying to throw Jaffe under the bus, which they were happy to do, it's just inexplicable because, I agree with you. I think you explained it perfectly that, wow, that was just it was that much more powerful that it was a defense witness that is just blowing up their entire narrative.
Definitely. JH, what's up?
Yeah, I was going to say that you really saw the defense push to attack the FBI about the time that they put Grasso on the stand. So maybe they thought his value was in undermining and impeaching, the FBI at that point, and it sort of backfired on them because because the prosecution got a lot out of it too. So yeah. And I guess I was just going to say one of the things this trial did was it kind of exposed the playbook on how this whole operation worked between, Perkins Coie, Fusion GPS, and Jaffe to a certain extent. And, if you look at any event that happened, that involved Perkins Coie and Sussman or Elias and involved, any sort of digital information, I think it's a fair bet to say that, these three parties were involved and they were running the same playbook. And it really makes you turn your eyes towards CrowdStrike and the DNC hack, because they're all there. So it just, I don't know. But yeah.
Let's see here. Damien, what's up?
Hey man, thanks for all your coverage. I really appreciate it. I don't mean to I don't want to rain on the parade. I think this has been really interesting trial. I've been following Robert Gouvea's YouTube channel like a maniac. But here's the thing, as a little reminder, to me, everything hinges on October 5th, because that's at the point where the cover-up really happened, in my estimation, right? They figured out that this is all false. Basically, all it was people looking up things. No transactions ever executed. It's I work in tech, and it was just baffling to me that this even made it this far. But that's at the point where you have bad actors, feeding information into the FBI, and then the FBI internally figures out this is fake, and then what do? They continue this charade. So that's really bad. But just as a little reminder, and not to kind of, I don't hate the FBI, but they've been up to chicanery for decades. And think about this: whoever went to trial for any of the shenanigans going all the way back to Waco or Ruby Ridge or any of the other stuff? So I hate to be a cynic, but I don't know. I'm not real convinced that anything's going to happen at all with any real convictions. I think they'll keep playing this out, but I'm not sure where it's going. But thanks again for all your work. This has been an outstanding coverage on this.
Well, thank you, Damien. I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, you leave it up to the federal government and they find themselves innocent all the time. It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, obviously we saw it today or yesterday. The FBI is not going to be looked at any further for their dropping the ball on the rape of the U.S. gymnast, which is just disgusting. That being another case where the FBI came into information about abuse and they didn't do anything about it. So I take your point. I think there are some indications that we could see some additional indictments at the FBI. Nothing's for sure, and we'll just have to see. Let's see here.
Hey, I had just one quick question.
Sure.
When Elias is sitting there, were you there? You weren't there for his testimony, were you?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. So okay. The FBI witnesses, when they're sitting there in the stand and they can't remember shit,
mm-hmm.
How is that playing with the jury? Is it, and how are they projecting the fact that they have their memory is zilch? When compared to say Baker, who's sort of the benchmark rememberer of the trial,
Yeah, I mean it doesn't play well with the jury. I can tell you that, and I think the defense did a really effective job of putting the FBI agents on trial and ripping them apart in cross-examination, but it ultimately didn't win them a whole lot of points on the central issue of the case, which is that Sussman lied, and I think they dropped the ball on continuing to assert that he didn't lie, because it is clear that he did. And instead of making their entire case on materiality, they poked and prodded at some of these FBI agents, sort of alluding to, well, nothing changed because this FBI agent didn't know this or something like that. That's not the standard. The standard is not a decision actually changed due to the false statement, making it material. That's not the standard. The standard is the false statement could change a decision. That's the threshold. And the decision of a reasonable FBI person, which the people that are on the witness stand or in the leadership of the FBI are probably not the reasonable people. They're not the objective standard anymore. So I think the defense kind of dropped the ball on that, and I was just amazed, just astounded at the defense that they actually put on, which seemed entirely about the March 2017 meeting where Andrew McKay briefed it, and a few people took notes to the fact that Sussman had worked, on behalf of the DNC, or that he brought these allegations on behalf of a unnamed client, because that's just irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant, and they made that the cornerstone of their entire defense, which was just incredible. That is the worst thing you could do, because you don't know what information was developed over those 6 months. And even them, they brought up witnesses to testify about the March 2017 meeting, and they couldn't remember anything. So at the end of the day, you have Baker on the stand saying he's 100% confident that Sussman told that lie to him as he walked in the door. And you have the text message from the night prior where Sussman said, "I'm coming not on behalf of any client." And then you have the statements given to, Anderson and Priestap where they wrote it down on that day. Sussman said he's not representing a client. So those are 4 pieces of really damning evidence. And then you have Baker himself saying, "I wouldn't have even taken the meeting. If he said he was coming on behalf of the DNC, I wouldn't have taken the meeting." So that's materiality right there. And you don't even have to go further than that. But if you wanted to, you can dig into the testimony of people like Allison Sands and Ryan Gaynor and some of these others. And they're like, yeah, if I'd have known this was political, I would have totally changed the way I did this or that. So I think the prosecution did everything they could. I think they met every standard that is necessary under the rule of law. And I would expect, I would lean towards a conviction on this. King, I don't know if you have any thoughts to share, but.
No, I agree with everything you said.
Was Sego asked about? She had attended the meetings with Perkins Coie and Cooey and Fusion GPS, and was she asked at all about the circular reporting strategy, whether that was discussed around her in her vicinity, or that bit that Elias and Mook so strongly avoided or denied, that there was any effort or intent to leverage FBI investigations in service to the lie, the big Russia conspiracy lie. Was Sego not ever asked about that?
That's a great question, and I'd have to review it. I don't think she was asked anything about their intentions or strategy. She established that she was part of a meeting where Sussman, Elias, and Joffe met, and they discussed the Alpha allegations. But they didn't follow up. They didn't dig into the substance of the conversation at all, which I thought was really surprising, given that she was immunized. But I don't recall.
Why was Berkowitz chasing that point? So that there. Mm-hmm. They wanted to show that Sussman was acting independent of any direction from Elias, and Elias said, "I don't want anybody talking to the FBI," well, which we know. Gosh, he's the one. He's one that couldn't remember anything. I bet he was smug and smirky when he was pulling up vacuums. But that's sort of the big elephant in the room. you know, in my head is Fusion GPS, obviously through Orr and these other channels, Steele wanted to fertilize the FBI seventh floor with this narrative. And Sussman, they say, was part of that. Berkowitz wants to point out that he wasn't part of that. And it seems like there's some big lying going on.
Oh, definitely.
You know,
yeah,
big. Those are big lies. Those are big lies, and you know, and so that's intent. You know, to lie to that extent. When there's got to be witnesses, there's got to be emails, and I don't know. You know, just it's a Hail Mary.
Yeah, it felt like a Hail Mary for them to represent to the court that the Clinton campaign wouldn't have wanted them to bring these allegations to the FBI is just ridiculous. Because, Elias and Sussman were working on behalf of the campaign. They were briefing this to campaign officials. And I just don't believe it. And I don't think the jury would believe it at all. And I think the prosecution made that a point in their discussions today, or their closing arguments today, in that if they were concerned about national security, if Joffe and these others involved were concerned about national security, why did they go to the media with it first? I mean, they have weeks and months of these communications going back and forth with reporters where they're, building up allegations and they're sending white papers back and forth, and, they're having all these meetings from, July 29th onward. Why didn't they go to the FBI in July? Why did they wait till September if they were so concerned about national security? And the only answer is because they wanted to give it to the FBI, and they wanted to have that report out there that the FBI, found it credible, or the FBI was investigating it, and it was fully believable. The truth is always going to be more compelling than a lie or a concocted story. And the truth is, they thought Lichtblau would put it in the New York Times, the paper out there, screaming credibility, especially with Lichtblau on the byline with it. And that would blow up into the massive story just a couple days before the election, and that would be enough. And that's what they thought would happen, I think. So,
the other thing with Elias is they are pushing the Steele dossier to the FBI, 6 ways from Sunday. So that was an obvious lie. That, of course, they are willing to go to the FBI because they were taking the Steele dossier to the FBI. And I wish I don't know if that would have opened the door, that they could have brought in some of the Steele dossier stuff to ask him, hey, okay, let's talk about how little that you trust the FBI. I don't know if the judge would have allowed it or if that would have been possible, but it did seem like a good opportunity to really impeach Elias, who would clearly lying.
Yeah, well, I had that thought during Mook's testimony, because Mook testified something to the effect of, well, we didn't know if these claims were authentic or whatever. We were just going to give it to this reporter to have them run it down, right? And then you compare that to what they did with the Steele dossier, where they're just pushing out just smear campaign. Like, Mook was just looking totally ridiculous up there. And I wish there was more of an expansive questioning, allowed by the judge. I understand it's just a false statement case, but like that would have been like the perfect question is, wait a minute, you're saying you want the reporter to just run this down because you don't have the expertise and you don't want to put out like uncorroborated information or whatever. Because he was asked about like their tweets about it as when it came out in the Slate article, they considered it like run down or whatever, like corroborated. And that's why they tweeted out in late October. But it's like, no. Like, you knew it was garbage. Come on. I mean, you're pushing the Steele dossier, and you knew exactly what was going on.
One thing I wish the prosecution had done when Mook got on the stand and tried to lie like that, or at least shade the truth in kind of an obvious way. I would have played Mook the video of him in that press conference, July 24, 2016, where he says, in a press conference, our experts, we have experts who have told us that there's something going on between Trump and Russia. And we're going to be looking at that. I would ask him who his experts are. And do they have anything to do with this case? Because it kind of shows the origin. He had the origin of the whole narrative right there before the first meeting that came into evidence involving the lawyers, the last week of July. And he's very positive in that video. And I don't know what he would have said, because at that point, it's clear they are on a opposition research track involving Trump and Russia, involving the use of experts who are trying to piece it together. And so the first thing that pops up first things are Jaffe and Steele, both of whom managed to get put into the FBI. So to me, that's a story that didn't get told.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's good analysis as usual. Let's see here. Getting kind of late, so I will take one or two more questions. I do want to wrap this up for the next couple of minutes, and hopefully everybody has some plans, something enjoyable to do. Hopefully everybody has a 3-day weekend here, and obviously we'll pick this up for sure. I mean, if we get a verdict on Monday, we're for sure having a space to chat on Monday night. We'll just play that out. I don't think I'll put it on the schedule or anything, but for sure, if there's a verdict on Tuesday, we will have a space to chat on Tuesday. So let me see here. Trying to add a few people. There's a few technical issues that are. Yeah, it says that. I'm sorry to those that are requesting to speak or seem to be having some technical issues, not adding you. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here, guys. I really appreciate everybody hopping on. Friday night, I know everybody's kind of busy, but wanted to put this out there just in case there was a verdict today, mostly. So appreciate everybody coming on. I appreciate our speakers. They're outstanding as usual. King, it's always really, really nice to have you here on these chats, answering all the legal questions. Hopefully, I think there's going to be a lot more trials. So hopefully, we got a couple more years of this. So we'll try to pace ourselves, and we'll go ahead and end this one tonight. So I hope everybody has a good night and a good weekend, and I will see you next week. All right, guys. See ya.